let's say that I headed off to Patagonia tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah, and I had a bunch of books with me, and let's say that I did nothing with myself except work out and cook my own food. How long would it take me to have a beginner level of proficiency in calculus? So let's say that I have a pretty good grasp on it, not just a grasp. How does my life change?
What you're observing is that you've never had occasion to use these things.
Never.
Until by accident, you pressed the wrong button and you saw them and you realize you don't even know what they mean.
I have no idea.
But you never had occasion to use them.
Correct.
That's absolutely the standard thing in math education once you get beyond arithmetic for most people.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking with you.
No, it's just super interesting to me. You exposed my own ignorance, which was a good thing.
I think that should give us courage, exposure to other people's perspectives.
It's moving us in a good direction.
So you're of course well known for this study where you made up incomprehensible articles, submitted.
The first one, yeah. The second one were very comprehensible, but yeah.
And submitted them to journals and had a share of them accepted.
Yeah, 7 before we got busted by the Wall Street Journal.
Right, and it was very satisfying to us who've questioned some of the techniques that are used in various fields to hear that not always could they distinguish BS from the real thing. Of course, that might be true in the natural and physical sciences as well, so I don't know that we have any cause to be glad. But the particular aspect of this that was of interest to me is that you got called on it and was treated as an ethical breach, as a professional ethics.
Right.
And since I teach statistics, I'm familiar with a lot of examples of studies that people do where they did essentially the same thing as you, and yet they're considered studies you want to talk about all the time.
Really?
Yes, they're considered examples of good studies.
What are the studies?
One of them has to do with ferreting out racial discrimination in hiring. And the particular study involved taking a set of resumes and making 2 copies of each, let's say.
I remember, yeah.
And then on half of them, changing the name to a name which sounds more African American.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be, but there are certain names that are associated with being African American. Then they sent them out to employers and looked to see when they got called back for an interview. Well, I don't really see why sending out a false resume to an employer is different than sending out a false article to a journal.
I remember that. When Alan Sokol first did it in the late 90s with social text, quantum hermeneutics of gravity, the IRB didn't bring him up on any charges, but it was interesting. I mean, I haven't thought about this stuff in literally years, but last night I put into Grok, Grok 3, what are the biggest danger to democracy? And one of the things it said is a crisis of trust in the institution. And then I put it into ChatGPT, and it said the same thing. We have had, and I've been screaming about a few things: the debt, nobody cares about that. The legitimacy crisis in institutions, nobody really cares about that. The fact that there's corruption and fraud in the peer-reviewed journals as a whole, nobody really cares about that. So, I think we're getting what we deserve. I mean, that's the idea in a democracy, is that you have to have transparency and accountability, and we're not willing to hold ourselves or institutions accountable. So it's all crumbling.
But sometimes we do, and it's acceptable to engage in the kind of stratagem that you used.
Yeah, I wish people had listened to me. I mean, I wish that it would have started some meaningful reform. The problem in retrospect was not that we got caught by the Wall Street Journal when it wouldn't have made a difference. We probably would have got 5 or even 6 more papers in, but that was not the problem, which I thought it was at the time. The problem was it was too early so that people didn't realize it. Like if we had done it a few years later, I think it would have lubricated the machine in which people were already starting to understand the wholesale ideological capture and the bowing to morally fashionable notions. But the corruption in the institutions, in the journals, was just so deep, and they had to punish anybody who challenged or questioned it. So now, again, I never think about this stuff anymore, but now there's a replication crisis in psychology. And
Yes, I'm aware of this.
yeah, it just went from 50 to 60%. In economics, it's up to 70% now. So, but nobody cares.
It's not true that nobody cares.
Okay.
I'm one of the
Virtually
people who
nobody
care.
cares. Virtually nobody
Yeah,
cares.
and
you and me care.
In part,
about
that's
it.
because I teach statistics and I use statistics. And there's a good case to be made for what the source is of those problems. There's also some fraud. That's not something that,
Yeah, you find that more in scientific journals, data fabrication.
The other example was a much more serious ethical breach than you or the resume study could be seen as. After all, sending out a resume, it hardly imposes any cost on an employer, but it does impose a cost. The others include a study of medical intervention. And there have been hundreds of studies done of this intervention.
Yeah.
And none of them have ever gotten human studies permission for this. To do a medical study without having approval from a human studies board is a fireable offense in most places. But this one type of intervention did not need to follow those rules.
Racial?
No, there might have been, how do you intervene in race or transgender?
Yeah.
I guess that make more sense. People would be unhappy whichever way they were assigned. No, it's something called intercessionary prayer.
Oh, yeah. The Harvard Prayer Study. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, there's hundreds of these. And as a statistician, I look at the hundreds of them and see some that came out as so-called statistically significant. And I say, well, in the context of hundreds of studies, some are going to come out as statistically significant, even if nothing is going on.
Correct.
It's not for me to say whether something is going on or not in intercessory prayer. Some people say yes, and some people are find it less compelling. But it is an intervention. And the rule is, if you do it to the intervention targeted to improve medical outcomes. And the rule is, if you're doing an intervention that's experimental, where you don't know from previous practice what the outcome, you need institutional review board, the human studies. But no one raises this because, well, it's prayer. And
so maybe that means that they don't believe it themselves. If you accept the metaphysical assumptions or some of the metaphysical assumptions, it could be the case that if you have Christians, for example, praying people to recover from some, whatever ailment they're suffering, that they could be praying to the wrong God. So you could be harming the patients. So you need some kind of, I would think one would need some kind of IRB approval.
Previous clinical experience with this, approval for a drug, for example, before you can just prescribe it without approval.
Right.
Then it's not an experiment anymore, it's been approved. But it's always an experiment in a sense.
So, so help me understand this, because I've been struggling with it. Why do you care about the corruption in peer-reviewed journals or academia? Almost nobody seems to care. Why do you care? Well, I care, but why do you care?
There's two kinds of corruption, or let me divide corruption into two kinds of corruption. One is a sort of cynical profit motive, you're cheating corruption.
Right.
The other is the soft corruption of bad methodology. And much of the reproducibility problem in psychology is especially prevalent, but in social sciences, general educational studies and such, much of that comes because people fool themselves, because they're taught that a certain acceptable standard for making statistical claims, and the statisticians don't believe that this is an acceptable standard, and they've been calling for more than 50 years. The professional society, the American Statistical Association, has been calling on scientists to stop this. It's not, you're misusing it. You don't know what it's for.
But why should anybody care? You have your statistics and numbers, they have their lived experiences.
Well, no, they're pretending. They are presenting them with the objectivity of data and data analysis.
See, that's the problem. You just put your finger on the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is not that they have lived experiences. Everybody, by definition, who's living has lived experience. Maybe if you're in a coma, you don't. But the problem is that you're passing that off as true.
Right. Now
as knowledge, like you're pretending. You are pretending. Either you're pretending or you're just so delusional that you. So then let me ask you this question: why do you think virtually nobody cares? I mean, we've known about this problem since.
So the issue, the methodological problem, goes under the name of hypothesis testing.
Correct.
And in hypothesis testing, you either reject or fail to reject something called the null hypothesis. And if you reject it, you're allowed to call this statistically significant, a statistically significant finding.
Right, correct.
Those are correct words from the statistics literature in the first half of the 20th century. And that's the way it's taught now. But the word significance in that 100 years ago meant something different than it means in the last 50 years. Significance to every reader, just about every reader, is important, makes a big deal.
That's a good point.
Take note of this.
That's a really good point.
And significant in the statistical sense just means p less than 0.05.
Explain that for people.
So in hypothesis testing, which is a technique introduced about 120 years ago for deciding when to continue doing bench work. So you're an experimenter and you're doing something with rats in a drug or something like this. You've got 3 rats in this group and 5 rats in that group. One is a control. Whether you give placebos to rats, I don't know, but let's assume you do. And you're doing some work and you get a difference between them. Well, that difference could have come by chance, just that the happier rats were in one group. And so it looks like the treatment you gave them, sugar pills, made them happy as opposed to the other group. Does it have to be that way? No, it's just the play of chance, whether the happy or the sad rats got put into the treatment or the control group. And so it was realized that you needed some way to avoid the worst influences of chance. And this method was invented, which said that if you do this calculation, it's a thing called a p-value. If you calculate this statistic, it's taught in every introductory statistics course. If you calculate the statistic and you have p bigger than 0.05 is the standard, then you should say there's nothing going on in my experiment. Or there might be, but my data don't show that.
Right.
And so then it's up to you. Do you want to continue on with your experiment? Do you want to bring in more rats? You might say, how important is this clinically? But it was invented in order to weed out of the scientific literature studies that had no business calling themselves scientific evidence for a particular claim.
Okay, so I never thought about it before until you said it, but it is, if something is statistically significant and one has zero background in statistics, they'll just look at the word significant.
Even if you have some background in statistics.
So what do you think a better word is?
Oh, it's easy.
Oh,
Discernible.
I'm just trying to think how many people know the word discernible. Statistically discernible. It'd probably be more precise, yeah.
Well, it would be on target with what you actually have from this p-value.
Right.
Importance is a matter of the setting in which the intervention would be applied, right? So reducing someone's blood pressure by 1 millimeter of mercury, that's not no clinician is going to say, whoa, that's going to do it for us. So not significant, but you could have a study large enough that you could find in a discernible fashion, that you could overcome the play of randomness with the size of your study, and you could determine that this was not just due to luck. There was something else going on, maybe. These statements always come with a maybe in statistics, but the maybe is okay. That's just part of reasoning with luck, reasoning with probability.
Who sets the p-value?
Who set the p-value at a 0.05?
Yeah.
Oh, we have great records about this. So it was set by the person who introduced the terminology, the null hypothesis and null hypothesis testing. He called it significance testing. Was there any meaning to the result in the sense of, is it not just due to luck? And he said, well, if this number is smaller than 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 100 or 1 in 20, then you can say you have a significant result.
So it's nothing objective then?
Well, there's no hard line that would resolve all the problems.
Correct.
It's like any filter. You want to keep out the bad stuff, but not keep out the good stuff.
Yeah.
And so this level of 1 in 20 has worked out to be a kind of reasonable economic way of allowing in some studies that might just be due to luck without precluding others that to making everyone have such a big sample size that no one could afford to engage in such experimental work.
Okay, so last night I was trying to figure out the exchange rates. So I had my iPhone, and I have this app on my calculator. You enter a number, and it automatically gives you the exchange rate per the country. But I was laying down, and I guess I flipped my phone or something.
Yeah,
It turned,
okay.
and I accidentally went to press a number, and I got the scientific calculator, and I looked at that, and I said, like, I literally do not know one thing on that whole thing. Like, I don't know the X's and the E's backwards. Like, I don't know any of that. I'm 58. I have managed to very successfully live a very happy
You think?
life. Well, I mean, that's because that's what I was asking you. Like, what? Like, let's say that I knew what all that stuff meant.
Yeah.
You know, the backwards E's and all this stuff. Like, let's say that I knew what that meant. What could I do with that I cannot do now? Assuming that I don't want a new career as, like, you know, a particle physicist or an engineer or something. Like, how would that, or maybe it wouldn't at all. Would that, like, could I just do something with that I can't do now?
So one answer is yes, you could. Would it be something that's important? What you're observing is that you've never had occasion to use these things
Never.
until by accident you pressed the wrong button and you saw them and you realize you don't even know what they mean.
I have no idea.
But you never had occasion to use them.
Correct.
That's absolutely the standard thing in math education once you get beyond arithmetic for most people.
Uh-oh. I'm in trouble.
So I mean, not everyone can do arithmetic well, and you've had cashiers who, you know, just can't figure out.
So that I do use. So when I go to a grocery store and I want to make like I use math, like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I use those almost daily.
Absolutely. We all do.
How could I more successfully navigate the world if I knew what a backwards E was?
The backward E comes from a style of mathematical proofs. Mathematical proofs are the domain of mathematicians. And I myself like to hear about proofs because then I don't have to think about it again. But I don't find proofs themselves compelling because I can prove many things that are wrong.
Okay, so you don't even use the backwards E. Okay, so what about
That's
like
a shorthand way of writing things down. And it is
a cosine
it's
or
like,
a wave
it's like
function?
runic symbols. It's a way of putting things out there that are imposing and impressive to other people. They impressed you, right? You didn't think, what garbage. They must have, the calculator must be broken. It's showing these symbols that aren't symbols.
No,
right? There's prestige in that.
Well, I mean, I guess, I mean, I don't know. Is there prestige? I mean, there's a prestige in the way that, you know, if someone has a domain-specific expertise in, like, I don't know, something like 13th century, you know, hen dyeing in some village. I mean, I guess it's just so.
Well, let's stick with the 13th century.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you took algebra in high school.
I did. I think I could still do a basic equation now.
Okay. Although the question is...
Oh, don't test me.
No,
The pen is on the paper. You can call bullshit at any time. I think I could do it.
Okay. But now, of course, you don't use that stuff. There's
Never.
one reason why you say that about don't test me.
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you used it, you wouldn't mind being tested because you use it all the time.
Right. I remember the FOIL method. It's like the inside, outside. That I got that.
But a main component of the high school algebra curriculum is factoring polynomials.
Okay, that's it. That's way above my pay grade.
Well, it's a ninth grade algebra kind of topic.
Trouble.
I'm not trying to put you down, but it's interesting.
No,
it's interesting that I
don't-
could put you down.
Yeah, but that's the thing. To me, it wouldn't be a put down. Like, to me, it'd be saying, well, like, you don't know how to pack a parachute, you know, and like, okay, well, fucking whatever. Like, I just don't care about it.
Right. You would if you had to parachute jump.
Yeah, truly. Like, it would only be a put down if I cared about it or I had to use it and I couldn't do it.
Yeah. So the thing
yeah.
about this factoring polynomials,
Yeah.
this was purely of theoretical interest. And in fact, mathematicians in the 1600s held competitions about factoring polynomials.
Sounds like a fun time, man.
And why would you have a competition? Because you're trying to get patronage from the wealthy people, from the king or from a duke of something or other. And so they would compete for a living, for patronage from these people by doing these polynomials. No other use. And yet we spend a lot of time teaching this in high school. And what's
Is
worse,
it brain activity or
well,
what?
of course, it is brain activity. It's like doing Sudoku.
Yeah, my dad used to do that.
But maybe high school students would do better if you had them play Sudoku instead of factoring polynomials.
So there's no practical import to that.
I don't want to make a blanket statement, but it's very unusual to factor polynomials, and the methods
Very unusual.
the methods that get taught in high school
Yeah.
only factor a limited set types of this, very limited types of it, and the larger problem cannot be solved. It's been proven cannot be solved using those techniques. Right? And they don't teach techniques that will work because they don't need them.
Okay, listen. I'm telling you in no uncertain terms. If the moment I leave this building, I could literally ask 1,000 people, my Uber driver, the guy at the taco place I go to, do you know how to factor polynomial? People would look at me as if I had lost my mind. Like,
I'm not sure about that here in Austin or in Seattle, where you get unemployed aeronautics engineers.
Okay, so we're teaching kids to factor polynomials, and we shouldn't be. So what should we be teaching them if they're not factoring polynomials?
Right. Well, there are other things to teach them. And let me give you
He's looking at me like I'm retarded.
okay,
go ahead.
Let
What
me
do we
give you
teach
another
them?
example. Did you take trigonometry?
Yes, I did.
Tell me about trigonometry.
I couldn't tell you literally the first thing. I remember there was
What does the name mean, trigonometry?
sine and cosine, and
It means sine and cosine?
I don't know what it means. I have no idea.
What does the name mean, algebra?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I'm mathematically illiterate.
Well, most people could not tell you what either of those words mean.
Yeah.
Trigonometry is easier. It's the study of trigons.
I have no idea what a trigon is.
Oh, yes, you do. What is
do?
a pentagon,
Okay? So the study of three-sided things,
which we call
triangles.
right? And they were
Who's
called
the man, baby?
they were called
That's what
trigons.
he's talking about.
And trigonometry is very useful
Really?
if
How
you're
so?
doing surveying
Okay.
or navigation. I do
My dad was a civil engineer. He used to.
Yeah. I do woodworking, and my knowledge of trigonometry lets me
That's interesting.
calculate many things that I don't have to guess.
That's interesting. I do jujitsu, and there are a lot of triangles that come up in jujitsu.
So
It's
maybe
like wrestling.
we've got something there. But the trigonometry they teach has an interesting historical origin. It comes from the Royal Navy about 1700, and in the Royal Navy they needed to navigate ships with a sextant and such.
Yeah.
And there were calculations that needed to be done on the measurements that they made in order to turn them into a latitude.
Yeah.
Can't measure longitude this way. They needed clocks for that. But in order to turn them into a latitude. And the calculations involved complicated functions. And you couldn't expect people to calculate these functions using arithmetic. Like if I said x squared, multiply x by x.
That
you
I
can do
got.
that with
that
arithmetic.
I know what that means.
Yeah. But these functions
That's about it.
could not be. And so what did they do? They presented them in Royal Navy books as tables where they give you the input value,
Yeah.
and then you look up in the table the output value. So just long tables, immense tables. And such tables were, through the time I went to college, they were a requirement of doing work. Now, the Royal Navy, in order to simplify the calculations, someone who was expert in this had them calculate intermediate results of no interest in themselves, but intermediate to getting to the final result, so that it wasn't all one big lookup and you could make a mistake.
Right.
Those are what they teach in trigonometry. The arctangent, the hyperbolic sine.
Okay. So.
I don't even know what these functions are. So
Well,
sine and cosine.
if you don't know what they are, I have literally no chance of knowing what they are.
Sine, cosine, tangent, that's what I need to know. But they teach all these obscure things, and students have to learn them, and they have to learn how they're related to other things.
So,
because they were in a Royal Navy book.
Okay, so my son reads and writes Mandarin.
Good.
My daughter as well. And it has been claimed, I don't know how rigorous the evidence for this is at all, but there are cognitive benefits for that kind of symbol manipulation. Is it just a kind of superstition. I'm still lingering on the factoring polynomials thing. Like, is there some kind of like cognitive benefit to being able to factor a polynomial?
Okay, so you would think there'd be some literature to demonstrate that this has helpful effects. I would like you to direct me to such literature because I don't know of any that exists
I don't know.
outside of the mathematics literature where they simply assert that it helps you think, it teaches you to think.
Yeah.
And why do they do that? Why is that a plausible claim? People who are good at math are good at certain logical operations and short-term memory tasks and
My
keeping
dad
track
was
of
like
things.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, those tasks are associated with higher intelligence generally. Does learning the task
Yeah.
make you more intelligent, or is it that you were intelligent
Or it trains
and therefore
you, or
you
does
could
it?
learn?
Yeah.
And it's certainly the case that if you want to learn something, time on task is really important. You need to
for
spend
sure.
time on the task. But absent a reason to use what they teach in high school algebra or trigonometry later on, I don't see any substantial basis to say that they're associated with learning to think. And many math teachers will say, and I will certainly, that you cannot teach algebra. What you can do is bring it out in someone who knows in some Socratic manner.
I was just thinking.
That
I was just thinking
knows what it
Socrates,
is.
Plato's
Someone
Meno.
whose habits of mind
Yeah.
facilitate these manipulations. The manipulations akin to transposing the key in playing music. Some people can look at music in one key and play it in another.
Well,
Yeah, amazing.
yeah.
Right? But if you don't have that ability, or if you don't practice it endlessly,
What did you say before? You said there's so much to unpack there. Time on task is indicative of what?
how much you learn. You see,
Is
the way
indicative of gaining an expertise?
the way we gain expertise is different from the scientific method. Scientific method is about discovery, moving forward where you don't have a map.
Yeah.
But most expertise, they say, for example, that 10,000, if you work for 10,000 hours in a
That's
field,
Malcolm Gladwell's thing.
Malcolm Gladwell, right? They say after 10,000 hours, you're an expert.
Yeah.
They're
Probably
not
a
saying,
rough, yeah.
and you have to have discovered this new thing and this new thing and this new thing.
Yeah.
That's not what makes you an expert. What makes you an expert is doing stuff for 10,000 hours.
I've been thinking a lot about activities that are associated close to reality and activities that are not close to reality.
Right.
Like, playing air guitar or pretending to play basketball without a ball. And those activities, and there's actually in Finland, there's a world champion. This is true. There's a world champion air guitar. I usually watch the winner because I find it fascinating.
Are you saying even if it's of no purpose, sometimes there's a value to it? I would say that neither of those are without purpose. It's questionable. I don't play air. Well, I do play air guitar,
Yeah,
but
you
it doesn't
just
mean
did.
anything.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to get anything out of air guitar. But someone who plays the guitar, like pianists crossing the Atlantic on cruise liners in 1920, they would bring paper keyboards to practice on.
Oh, wow.
Right, because it was too.
But that couldn't work because there's no corrective
You
mechanism.
say it couldn't work, and yet they were doing it.
Well, maybe they were mistaken because you would need to know if you played a wrong note.
You don't necessarily have to hear it to know that. When you're typing, you often have an idea that you hit a wrong key, even without looking at the letter that appears on the screen.
I guess only on a traditional typewriter, but yeah.
So it's not to say that, is ballet useful for something? You're not interacting with a single ballerina. You're not interacting with anyone.
Yeah.
Yet it's incredible. And by practicing that, you make yourself graceful in so many other ways that this is used to be a conventional part of upbringing for girls in the social classes.
No, I wasn't making a moral argument that although I believe the argument that one should spend more time on certain things and other things. I was just thinking about this idea of time in on something yields expertise.
Time on task.
Time on task, yeah. Time on task yields expertise. It seems to be universally true, but the activities that are closer to reality would take more time on task. Playing a musical instrument, speaking a foreign language, it would take more time on task than something that was make-believe. Like,
I don't know. I haven't examined make, whatever you'd call this,
Yeah, guitar.
air guitar or
Yeah.
the general concept. I don't know.
No, I'm just thinking out loud. Yeah, yeah.
But I do know that mathematics is special in a way. Music is special in the same way. You have prodigies. You get Mozart at the age of 4 performing well on a piano. That's not because he spent 10,000 hours on it. It's because he was a prodigy. And there are mathematical prodigies that work out the same way.
Right. And that's because there's something to be wrong about.
It's because they have some feature in the way they think or their musculature or whatever.
No, that expertise, though, you only develop that expertise if the activity is hooked to reality. In air guitar, it's not hooked to reality, so there's no real expertise.
I don't.
Or it doesn't have to be air guitar, like whatever.
I won't
make
argue
believe.
with you because I don't
Yeah.
have any empirical basis for the argument. And
Yeah.
one of my principles is that I should try to shut up when I really don't know about something and try to restrict myself at least to those things where I think I know about that. But one of those things is mathematics education. Because
Okay.
I've been doing this a very long time.
Okay.
I, of course, went through the same elementary school and middle school experience in math as you did. Might be a little bit different because I was in the new math generation.
God, yeah.
And I was one of the people who liked the new
How
math.
old are you?
65.
I'm 58.
But, then I got into high school algebra and I could do it. And no one was saying why I was doing this. If you do this, you'll be able to address this kind of problem. And even in the mathematics literature, they say that's not what algebra is about. Solving problems that you need to solve every day, that's a matter of drawing on past experience.
So what's the point of algebra, to go on to
Well,
trigonometry or
there's the
something?
question. So they will say, well, it makes you a better thinker. It could be.
Maybe, but a lot of things
be.
make you a better thinker.
And then, they have Algebra 1 and Trigonometry and Algebra 2. And each course, you lose some set of people. They don't take the next course. And then where is it all heading towards? It's heading towards calculus.
Right.
And there's even a name for the high school curriculum, GATC. Geometry, Algebra, Trigonometry, Calculus.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's heading towards calculus. And the explanation for why those other things are needed, not geometry, people get geometry, but why those other things are
Yeah, I
needed.
get geometry too.
Everyone knows what an angle is.
Yeah.
Do you know what a derivative is?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, that's good. But the point of studying these other things that you don't know the point of when you're studying them is to be able to get to calculus.
Okay, what happens is like Shangri-La? It's like a heaven? What happens when you're in calculus?
Well, calculus is an incredibly important topic, and the development of calculus and the Enlightenment as a whole go hand in hand.
Oh, talk to me, because I don't know almost anything about that.
No, the philosophers of the Enlightenment were very often also mathematicians who were interested in these mathematical issues.
So they go hand in hand, and that the principles used in calculus can be rationally derivable to the principles used in the Enlightenment?
No, because there was a revolution in the way of thinking.
Oh, that they're rationally drivable at all.
And that, but I can't tell you why, but that these mathematical ideas became acceptable, showed a tolerance of new ways of thinking that did not exist. And when the calculus was introduced, it was a set of techniques, and you couldn't justify the techniques using the math that they had back then. So Newton was trying to understand continuous motion.
Right, that I remember, yeah.
Galileo also was trying to understand motion, but he thought of it as motion from one time to another, just because he couldn't measure time. Not being able to measure time is a huge problem. No clocks, no time. So Newton introduced these methods and Leibniz introduced them at the same time. And they provided a framework for stating, for example, the laws of physics. That was the first thing that got stated. So you probably remember the expression F equals ma.
No.
Okay, well, many students will remember that force equals mass times acceleration.
Oh, yes, okay, yeah.
Okay, so what's acceleration?
The speed at which something goes?
No, that's wrong. Sorry, you fail.
Yeah.
Okay. The velocity.
It's a great thing that I don't care about the test, or I'd be in big trouble.
No.
What is it? What is it?
No, you're not in any
What is
trouble.
it?
You're not in any trouble. You're not in
What
any
is it?
trouble.
That's good. Yeah, what is acceleration?
So, velocity is the speed at which you're going.
Okay.
Acceleration And the velocity is the change in position.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. Okay,
Okay, how
so what's
fast
the
you change
acceleration?
permission. The acceleration is how fast you change velocity.
Okay, hold on. I got to think about that. The velocity is the change in position. Acceleration is how fast you change velocity. So, just give me that one more time. So, velocity is the change in position.
How fast you change position, right? 10 miles per hour.
Okay.
In an hour, you go 10 miles.
Okay. What's acceleration?
It's the change in velocity, the rate of change in velocity. And people who remember a little bit from high school physics will know 9.8 meters per second per second.
Yeah.
And people are always in a tizzy. What does a square second mean? Square meter, I understand that. What's a square second?
Okay.
So Newton introduced the ways to think about this.
Okay, hold on a second. I just want to make sure I understand before we go on. So, what is acceleration? So, why would you need something to? I'm still.
Why would you need that?
Yeah.
Because acceleration is proportional to force. If there's no force, there's no acceleration. We can feel force.
Okay.
We have a sense of what force is. And yet, how does it act on an object that's moving to change its motion?
Give me velocity again. What's velocity again?
Is the change in distance, the rate of change of distance. So miles per hour.
The rate of change.
It's a rate because it's per hour.
So
miles
if I took that cup and I threw it against the wall, that would be
unfortunate.
Yeah, it would be unfortunate. But what would the difference between acceleration and velocity be?
As
you took the cup, I'm not going to throw it against the wall. Yeah, what would the difference
as it's
be?
flying through the air, there's only gravity acting on it.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a force, and you know what's going to happen. It's going to go like that.
Yeah.
All right, that's not going to shatter it. It shatters when it hits the wall.
Correct.
Well, why? Because the velocity of the cup changes all at once. Over a very short time,
I see.
The velocity goes from whatever to zero.
Okay, got it. So
and that
now
means the force on the cup is what makes it go to zero. Very fast change in acceleration means a big force.
Don't give me force. So then acceleration is what now?
It's the rate of change of velocity. So if I drop the cup, it's going to go slow at first and then pick up.
Oh, the rate of change.
That's what Galileo studied.
I got it.
And Galileo made some mathematics about that, and then Newton put it into a much more general framework. And the framework is incredibly important. And knowing how to think about things that change and the rates at which they change, and even this much more abstract thing, the rate at which they changes. It sounds crazy.
And what's that called?
Well, in mathematics, you'd call a function the derivative of a function, the second derivative of a function.
God,
that's the framework.
I cannot imagine spending my time figuring that stuff. Can't we just outsource that all to AI?
It might be. I'll say I don't know what to say about AI because I don't have much experience with it. For myself, I would be unhappy, but that's because I've gotten to know that I'm an expert. I don't like having my expertise lowered in value. So it's okay. I forgive you, but and that might be come or not. But this way of thinking about change and the state, where the cup is, the state, and how it's moving, the change in state, that was introduced by Newton. And there's a certain mathematical formalism for it, which allows you to do calculations. And, they might be calculations. Where is this artillery shell going to go? They might be calculations. How strong does this wing need to be in order not to fall off the airplane? They might be calculations relating to sound. Sound is change in air pressure very fast. And we do all sorts of things with sound.
So it's interesting, just sitting here, because I literally never think about this stuff. It's kind of fun to think about and to learn about it. I'm still thinking about what you said. I'm still on the factoring polynomials. It seems to me to be more useful to learn this than to learn how to factor polynomials.
Oh, absolutely. Because it gives you a way of thinking about common occurrences. For example, you know about the national debt, whatever it is now.
I do. I think about it, write about it, tweet about it. Yes.
Okay. And you know what the deficit is.
Yes.
What's the relationship between the deficit?
One is a yearly thing and the other one is over time.
Okay. But how do they relate to one another?
Oh, they relate in terms of the total payment on the interest over time.
Okay. So if you had calculus, you'd be able to say the deficit is the change in the debt,
Correct. Yeah.
the rate of change,
Right.
change per year, you said,
Right.
on a yearly basis. Calculus allows you to put down
Oh, it
those
gives you
relationships.
vocabulary. Oh,
It gives you
interesting.
vocabulary, and even in these more abstract things, like meters per second squared, what
Yeah.
could that be? It gives you a way to think about them just by counting.
Oh, that's
Organizing
cool.
your thoughts.
Yeah, that's
it's
super.
very valuable. It's also very important
Yeah.
in doing all sorts of calculations in physics and such. But as an example of where it's important, Adam Smith did not have calculus. And so the things that he said about prices, for all the cleverness he had about, division of labor and such,
Yeah.
and he's a great writer, very smart guy, very
But
clever.
you don't need calculus for.
You don't need calculus for that, which is good because he didn't have calculus.
Yeah.
What you need calculus for is understanding the relationship between supply and demand. And if you read Adam Smith,
Why do you
will,
need calculus for that?
because you have to come up with the reason why prices will adjust themselves so that supply equals demand. So you've got price and you've got change in price. And the driving mechanism behind the market price is that supply, when it's out of balance with demand, causes prices to change. If demand is high and supply is low, prices go up.
So I can intuit that in a very.
You can. Of course you can. Adam Smith could not. He did not talk about supply and demand. He talked about there being a natural price. A lot of what he talked about was...
He gives the example the factory was like the button factory or something.
That's division of labor. It's lovely. It's great. It's poetic. It's an evocative image. But his work about the cost of something, the value of something, is crazy bad. And he's got basically a Marxist a Marxist view towards the value of labor. And I'm not trying to put it on a political spectrum, but the Marxists traditionally said that how much is this table worth? It's exactly equal to the work that went into making it. And then they run into a problem. How much is that worth?
Yeah.
Worth. Well, that's the wage you pay the
Oh,
person.
I see. Yeah.
But why is the wage what it is?
Yeah, I've heard that critique. I think there's some really interesting legitimacy to that. So let me ask you a question. Let's say that I headed off to Patagonia tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah, and I had a bunch of books with me. I had Grok 3. I lived near a local library. And let's say that I did nothing with myself except work out and cook my own food. How long would it take me to have a beginner level of proficiency in calculus?
I think that
Assuming I had a desire.
I think if it's taught the right way, which is to say taught without using lots of algebra and trigonometry, then you would have a basic grasp in a short period of time.
A month, a year?
Well, it depends how often you're studying it. But let's say you were taking an hour of class a day in calculus.
Well, I was thinking like if I was an autodidact and I just want to learn it by myself.
Well, that relies on my knowing how fast you learn
Okay,
things.
so let's say I take a class. There's a local university and it's in English because my Spanish isn't good enough to do that. How long would it take me?
There's two answers to that.
Okay.
The answer I want to give you is that if the professor at the university was teaching calculus properly, and what that means for you is that in a way that you could learn it.
Okay.
Improperly would be in a way that you can't learn it. Okay. Why is that improper? Well, because you wanted to learn it. It's for your goal. Then if they were teaching calculus properly, 4 weeks of classes would do it.
No shit, really?
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you about something that we've done. We've done on the ground in universities. If it was being taught in the traditional way, without your trigonometry, without any algebra,
big trouble.
You'd be in trouble. And even if you had those things,
what would it years then? Because I had last time I had algebra, I was in the 9th grade, I think.
Yeah, well, let's come back to the real world. So people like you, when you went to college, could not participate in a STEM major because you were so far.
No conceivable way.
Right. And it's not even a question of whether you're interested in that or not.
Well, I wasn't, but yeah.
But if you had been, and there are students who are, then you couldn't have done it. And coming back to the way things play out in the real world, what happens with this math curriculum, GATC, is that students fall out. People take geometry, they're good at it. Algebra, they fail some. Trigonometry, more fail. Algebra 2, more fail, right? And then they're heading towards calculus. and what happens to those people. And we have a lot of data on those people because a lot of people are required to take calculus or something called pre-calculus.
Yeah, I remember that.
For their an example would be nurses.
Okay.
A common requirement in nursing school is that you take college algebra, they call it.
Okay. So I go to Patagonia. I enroll in a class. It's in English. I study calculus the right way. I learn it slightly above a basic level.
Yeah.
And say,
You'd have a grasp on it.
say,
When I say
yeah.
acceleration, you'd know what that is.
So let's say that I have a pretty good grasp on it, not
Yeah.
just a grasp. How does my life change?
Oh, well, that depends on what you're going to do next in Patagonia or where you're going to come after Patagonia.
Let's say then I decide to get it back into doing what I'm doing now.
Okay. It probably doesn't change at all because you're reasonably successful doing what you're doing now without having had this month of classes in Patagonia.
But does it like, is it like when I hear a news story, I can better understand
That's
that?
true. And there's a lot of, especially in economics, a lot of things reported that people don't understand have this relationship between the amount of something and the flow that changes the amount.
So in those cases, would calculus be better than statistics? Because it seems to me that
different
statistics
thing.
should be better.
That's a really good question. But I want to come back to the nurse.
Okay.
Let me do this with the nurse who's taking not quite calculus, but college algebra. And the nurse needs to take this because it's required. I used to work and teach in a medical school. I know which parts of college algebra a nurse needs to use. And in fact, it's anti-helpful. It's hurtful to nurses. They have to be trained to do something different than they were taught in college algebra.
Is it a hoop? Is that why they do it?
Why do people require it?
Yeah, just so that they can say you need some basic. I mean, why do they require it? I'm just guessing. I have no idea why.
Because it's traditional to require it.
That's not a reason.
And,
Well, I guess it's a reason. It's not a good reason.
State universities will often require these things of transfers from community colleges without requiring it of their own students.
Oh,
That's a
interesting.
cynical kind of gesture, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
to the nurse, about half are going to drop out of nursing because of college algebra.
Is that really the case?
It is really the case. And if you follow such people as they're trying to get to calculus, you want to be an engineer, you have to take some calculus.
Yeah.
All right. The attrition is about 50% at each level of course.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Years ago in the late 90s, I think it's the late 90s, maybe earlier, I read Paulus's Mathematical Innumeracy and Its Consequences.
Yeah.
Man, that book blew me away. That book was a huge. You can guess what it's about from the title, Mathematical Innumeracy and Its Consequences. And I've often wondered, should I? That's why I was asking all these questions about how my life, what benefit it would be to me. Because I've often thought maybe I should just take a little time, but then what's the opportunity cost? And I mentioned Argentina because I'm trying to learn. I'm going to learn Spanish and then go around doing what I'm doing there. I don't really know. I can understand why a younger person would want it because it gives them more life opportunities, but far more of my life is behind me than in front of me. So I don't really know why I would want to learn it.
Right. And I think a good answer is there's not a strong reason for you to learn it. You have other things that concern you and other talents.
Yeah, like the collapse of Western civilization. I'm working on that. working on staving that off.
And so, yet, if you're in school, there are often these requirements which were not calculated based on what needs to be known. And in fact, the calculus that's taught in universities has very little to do with physics, even though it's supposed to be setting you up to study physics. Has very little to do with chemistry, even though it's supposed to set you up.
Really, chemistry? I don't think that's...
Well, I can explain how that happened, but it's important to recognize the social dysfunction.
Okay, how does it deal... Sorry, I just need to understand this before. How does it deal with physics? I get how it deals with physics. How does...
Acceleration, force, those are physics,
of course.
energy.
How does it deal with chemistry? What is the relationship between calculus and chemistry?
Oh, there's reaction kinetics. There's, how far will a chemical reaction go before it's in equilibrium again? chemical engineering is all about this sort of stuff, is inventing processes that
Well, so calculus is kind of a root discipline in a sense.
it is because it's required. It would be if people learned calculus by studying calculus, but they don't usually.
I see. They learn it by studying algebra and trigonometry.
No.
I thought.
No, algebra and trigonometry are taught to them in preparation for calculus. But the calculus doesn't need that much algebra and trigonometry. And the calculus gets taught in a way that is about mathematics rather than the applications of calculus.
So, if someone is a math teacher, K through 12, and of course I understand it's going to be at each level, like what should they be doing?
K through 12 is one of those areas where I have to shut up because I don't have experience teaching K-12, and also the politics of K-12 are crazy.
So
let me tell you why I could do something about this. But first, I've got you to understand the magnitude of the social problem. So there are people on this sequence of courses to get to calculus because it's required for something. And someone who starts out in this sequence who's not going to an elite school, say, there's about 90% attrition to pass calculus.
Huge.
I'm not saying 15%, some can't do it. I'm not saying 50%, it's hard, It's 90%. And that's kind of like saying, what does it take to become a concert pianist?
Many hours.
And you'd expect 99.9% failure.
Right?
Easily. But this is 90%, so not quite so bad. That means people who've taken calculus, who've passed calculus. But those people, when you ask them what it's for, they will say, I do not know. And a calculus teacher in high school will say, I do not know.
That's really interesting.
Now, first of all, why are you teaching something that students are going to fail at that rate? Doesn't that suggest that you should be changing something? If your goal is to get them to a level of proficiency in, say, nursing or...
I think they would say, well, listen, this is just hard.
That's what they do say. That's accepted in mathematics. It's also accepted to fail large numbers of students. That's part of the culture of mathematics, right? Everyone takes it for granted. Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can't help your kids with their math homework, even though they're in third grade. We accept that failure. And mathematics, in fact, has a distinct culture that's highly competition-oriented.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about grade averages in humanities versus STEM and math, and it's almost like a badge of honor that they fail people in mathematics.
Many math departments, I think it's a misguided policy, but they will say, well, we need to teach them this stuff, and they don't get it, no matter how hard we do it.
And if some people don't get it, well, it's too bad.
It's too bad. But they don't say, oh, they need this stuff. And if they don't get it,
oh, interesting.
They say, if they don't learn the stuff that we're teaching, and what is the stuff that they're teaching, as someone who went through graduate school in engineering and in economics, I never used my high school, the calculus that I took my senior year in high school. I never used it. I was a physics major. I didn't use it.
So let's say somebody comes in the room and they put a pill down on the table and they say, this is incredible. This is great. This pill will increase your mathematical knowledge tenfold to what you have now.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's cool. I'll take the pill. And you take the pill. What can you do, you personally, what avenues would be open to you that then are not open to you now?
And this reflects what I've done in my career and what we're doing here at UATX.
Yeah.
All right. So first thing is recognize there's a problem that if routinely half the students in a calculus class fail in the first calculus class and in the second, and you might not know this, but calculus is a 4 or 5 course sequence at most universities.
I do not. No, I know nothing. I know about as much about calculus as I do about
almost
football.
Nobody except engineers and physicists takes the whole thing because the failure rate is so high and because they don't know what it's for.
Yeah, my dad was telling me he was good at math. He loved calculus.
Right. So first, you accept that there's a problem. And you say, can we do something about it? There are some problems you can't do anything about. The mathematician who says, well, it's hard.
True.
They're saying, can't do anything about it.
True.
But you should at least have some tolerance for people who are trying to do something about it.
True. What did your parents do? Were they engineers or something?
My father was a lawyer, and my mother was a travel agent.
So how did you get into this?
They wondered about that. All the males in my family, my grandfather, my father, my brother, his son, they were lawyers.
So you don't know how you got
I'm the
into
black sheep of the
Do
family.
you have kids?
Yes, 3 daughters.
Are they into this? Are they into math?
Some are, some aren't. One of them is just, you would say, oh, I can beat you at any math contest.
Well, I don't know about that. I think you grossly overestimate my mathematical abilities.
I don't think so. But our youngest daughter works for a State Department contractor.
Okay.
And she manages programs.
Okay.
And the management of programs involves data.
Yeah.
You have applicants they send people to study in countries where they speak critical languages. That's what the programs are about. And you have to administer these things. Of course you do. And so they have data. How do people arrange data? They arrange it as Excel spreadsheets. That's what people do.
Okay.
Now, Excel spreadsheets are too difficult for me to use. And the reason that is, it sounds absurd, is that I need to know that I'm doing the right calculation. I need to be able to demonstrate that what I'm doing is right. If I didn't care about that. So my daughter comes in and she has imbibed at the dinner table various principles of data organization, same way I did about law. But for her, it was molecular biology, my wife's work, and data and mathematics. And so she learned certain basic principles of data that are not hard. And so she's encountered all these problems with their spreadsheets when she started a new job about a month ago, and she's straightened them out. And they're saying, how do you know how to do this? Wow, that's much better. Whoa, we won't be confused when we try to combine these two things.
Interesting, yeah.
And the techniques aren't hard, but they have to be taught.
Yeah.
So we teach some of them in the QR2 course here that's taken in the winter term at University of Austin. You can teach these things, but they're not taught in the standard way because people think that a computer is cheating. In mathematics, can you use a calculator on an exam? They'll say no. Or silly things like my daughter taking math in high school had a computer because she's this generation, right? Of course she has a computer. She had to use a calculator in her math class. They didn't let her use the computer, and they didn't show her how to use the computer because they thought that would be super cheating. Calculator's just a little bit of cheating.
Interesting. We're coming to an end, but where can people find your work?
My textbooks are online. They're open source and online and free for anyone who wants to use them. I think the only people who want to use them are teachers who...
That's great. That's right.
I think for someone who's had a background in math but forgotten it all, so not you in Patagonia because you didn't quite have that background, but if you had 2 semesters of calculus, you're in a good position to read the calculus book and you'll come away knowing a lot more than you did, even with self-study. And the statistics book is the same thing. The calculus book is called Mosaic Calculus after a project I ran with the National Science Foundation. And then the statistics book is called Lessons in Statistical Thinking.
Okay.
And the difference between those two things is the difference in the communities that teach math and teach statistics. Statisticians are open to change. They've seen huge amounts of change in the last 30 years in how stuff is done. Mathematicians are not. If it worked in 1300, it still works now. I've asked assemblies of mathematicians, what's new in algebra in the last 100 years? I mean, in sort of high school level algebra. What are you talking about? There's nothing new in that. What's new in calculus? What? That was all settled way back in 1850. Well, no, it wasn't actually. But they're comfortable teaching stuff that was once true and still is true. That's the beauty of mathematics. If it once was true, it's still true. But if it once was useful, is it still useful? That's not part of the beauty of mathematics.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking with you.
No, it's just super interesting to me. You exposed my own ignorance, which was a good thing.